You'll not take her while I live. Then I'll take her when you're dead.
Look at me, sure. I'm the captain.
Captain James Howe!
Ahoy there, welcome to Rated Aargh. Thank you for joining us on another adventure as we chart our course through the realms of cinematic piracy. Today we're taking a look through our spyglass at Errol Flynn's first foray into the pirate genre, Captain Blood. My name is Ryan, and please join me in welcoming my co-captains, Christian and Braxton. Fellas, how are y'all doing?
Aye, we be doing pretty good.
I like it. I like it. Christian, how have you been?
Good. To be honest, I forgot a lot about this movie. And I think that's a lot about the time period of when it was made. Just, I guess, where it stands with us and how we like our pirate movies.
Mm. It was an interesting watch for sure. I'll jump right out the gate. I'm not normally into black and white movies, and in fact, at times of this, I was actually like somewhat bored, which is not something that I've really said about really any of the other movies. Even Cutthroat Island, which is probably one you could easily be bored in. This is one that there were a couple times, especially in the beginning, because it takes 45 minutes to even get into any kind of piracy. It took a while for me to be like, oh yeah, this is actually somewhat interesting. The rest of it, I was kind of like, this is it's like want to claw my eyes out. But that's my personal opinion. How do you guys feel about like older movies, black and white movies, just in general?
Well, the black and white isn't the problem. It's how the movie's made, because there are black and white movies that are edited extremely well and are extremely watchable. So it really is just it's the editing style and the time period. You know what I mean? Whether they're black and white is kind of innocuous. It's the style and the way of filmmaking, right? And what's interesting to me about this movie is there's a lot of the older school stuff you can tell sort of from silent era and the beginning of film stuff that's in the movie, and that's all the weak stuff, right?
Yeah.
That you were just talking about. And then where it gets strongest is where we see stuff that we're familiar with, like with film language that we're familiar with. You know what I mean? Like the fast cutting on the action, and the usage of music to enhance the action and all that stuff like that. And I don't think that's just because we're familiar with it. It's because objectively over time we have determined that these set of things are good. And this movie hit on a lot of that because they were discovering that at the time, but it wasn't completely that.
Yeah, and I feel like nowadays we're so accustomed to like a Marvel movie or something that's like really action packed, and this was
which almost leads to the opposite problem.
Yeah,
where it's almost got too much of modern styling that you're like, I'm just overwhelmed and I don't know what the hell's going on. This is on like the opposite end of the spectrum, but you could see the makings of sort of modern filmmaking in parts of a movie like this. And they're the strongest parts.
I agree with that. Christian, what do you think about older movies just in general?
It's hard for me to understand what's going on. And I think with this one being almost 100 years old, like it's tough enough to read literature or a book or magazine article, whatever it is, that's 100 years old and understand what they're saying. You can get probably like 70% of it. To me, this is a lot more difficult because, one, there's no subtitling. The audio is not the best. So if you miss the slightest thing, or, they have like strange terminologies for things, and then they were in the language of that time period, but also probably trying to draw
through the
influence
lens of the 30s.
Through like it was their own language from that time period of like the LA big city. This is how we talk, and then they're also throwing in like trying to be period specific with pirate terminology, and so there were times where it would go like minutes at a time, and I have no clue in reality what they're even saying.
Yeah, I felt that way.
You know, I wondered if a lot of
most
it
of
was
it.
just straight up based from the book, and the book is like pretty period accurate. Therefore, it makes it way harder to comprehend what they're saying because they are just speaking like a 16th century guy.
I mean, it definitely could have.
Yeah, beyond the language comprehension, it made me wonder like how attentive a 1935 movie watcher would be, because there was so much going on, and a lot of the shots, like in today's movie making directors and stunt coordinators are like so spot on with how to get you to pay attention to something. A lot of shots in here are like wides, and it's really difficult to discern who the main character is. And then when it's shot on like fuzzy film, you're like, is that the main character or is that someone else? And so it really made me appreciate what it was like to watch a movie back then and how much attention you had to pay specifically to a movie to follow anything that was going on.
Yeah, and I mean, the good thing back in 1935 is they didn't have all the distractions that we do now. They didn't have a cell phone that they could look down at in the middle of the movie and be like, oh, there's
you'd
like
pay a
a
nickel
lot of
and
other
go sit in a
things I can
dark
do.
room.
I mean, yeah, you
And
pay
that
to
was
go
it.
watch a movie and be entertained, and like that's kind of the bulk of it. Braxton, would you recommend that people watch this movie before getting too far into this episode, even though we've kind of talked a little bit about just, 1930s movies sort of in general?
I think the average person today, they could probably go without watching it and still enjoy listening to this episode. If you're, film history buff, I think it's probably a need to watch. But
I
more
think
so
it's
for
probably
its,
a must-watch for someone who's really into film history. I think
Right.
this is one
From a
that
historic
has been put
standpoint,
on lists.
it's very
of, like,
important.
top 1,000 movies everyone should see or something, or 100 movies even maybe that everyone should see. This is like one of the ones that people get recommended.
But objectively on its own, it's okay. It's watchable,
Yeah,
but that's about it.
I agree with that. I will say after like the hour mark, maybe it kind of picks up a little bit, and it was more enjoyable to watch and sit through. But
I could
don't know.
re-edit
I think-
this movie.
Yeah,
I know that's going to become a bit, but I feel like we could all probably re-edit this movie, cut it down to a good hour 40, and it would be great
Yeah,
because it's like what 2 hours and a couple minutes,
something like that.
which is pretty dang long for that time. I mean, the reason
Yeah.
why is because this was seen as a epic blockbuster type movie.
Mm-hmm.
So when it was a movie like that, they would elongate it because it's like it's all part of the more for your money, epic in scale idea.
Yeah, so the average, I did look this up, the average runtime for a movie in the 1930s was 1 hour, 21 minutes. Runtime for Captain Blood is 1 hour, 59 minutes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could understand it being like a little bit longer, but like 48 minutes longer, is that necessary? I mean, it takes 45 minutes to really even get into the movie.
With character introductions, it should be more action or character stuff at the end,
Yeah.
not in the beginning.
Yeah.
We understand very well the characters in the beginning because the movie does a good job with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of takes longer than it even needs to stay on that point.
Yeah.
And that's
so
when
Captain Blood,
when it drags, is that exact spot.
Yeah. So Captain Blood was released December 28th, 1935. Another Christmas release here, back to back on Christmas releases for pirate movies. But this movie, unlike Cutthroat Island, is quite
money.
loved by critics. Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 100% critic score, a 90% audience score. IMDb has it at a 7.7 out of 10, and Letterboxd has it at a 3.7 out of 5. How do you guys feel about that?
I think 3.7 on Letterboxd is a little too high.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it objectively.
Okay.
There are way better older movies.
I can agree with that.
Rotten Tomatoes for a 100-year-old movie is stupid. The critic score doesn't.
Yeah.
What critics?
Yeah.
The audience score, yes, but
there's only like maybe, 25, 35, somewhere in that range that have like, it's according to that number of critics, which is pretty Like it's a pretty small pool, I would think, in terms of like kind of what you'd see from like.
And
a big
again, if you're just
blockbuster
some
now.
newspaper guy in 1935, if you haven't ever seen a movie before, you go in and watch this, and you're like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen."
Yeah. I mean, back in 1935, I'm sure this was the thing to go watch.
Yeah,
for sure. Christian, do you have any thoughts on the ratings?
Seems a little bit high, but I guess I'm comparing it to stuff now. I just don't know how you can like compare it. If I were to watch a pirate movie that came out this year and gave it a 7, and then watch one from 1935 and gave it a 7. I mean, I don't know what I'm judging against. It feels like that'd be accurate.
It's not
compared
apples to
movies,
apples.
Yeah, for its time, but compared to everything overall, if you were just to watch this and compare it to every other movie you can watch right now, that seems a little bit high.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think if I was not watching this for the podcast and I looked at it on streaming or something one day and was like, oh, I've never watched this before, let's watch it, I would have turned it off after the first 20 minutes probably.
Right.
The bad thing is, especially nowadays, you have to capture somebody's attention relatively quickly. Movies is not quite as bad as like a YouTube video or like a TikTok or something like that.
But the ease of switching it is there still. To be like, whatever, we'll watch something else.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some, there's some like plot building, some world building maybe that takes place at the beginning. But I mean, I don't know that it really has that much to do with the ending of the movie at all.
Right.
I mean, the very, very end, like the actual ending of the movie, yes. Does it need 45 minutes of build-up to have that payoff? I don't think so. I think you could have cut the first 45 minutes down to like 2 to 5 minutes and then gone on with the rest of the movie, and then it still would have paid off in the end.
Yeah, I agree.
So the description, I pulled this one from Prime Video again of Captain Blood. There were several that I looked at. I looked at Apple TV.
What is the name of this segment?
YouTube, because I don't know. It's
where we make fun of streaming services description.
Yeah, basically.
Which, okay, speaking of which,
we need to come up with a name.
I wanted to bring this up because when you look at the back of like old DVD or like VHS descriptions of movies, not a lot, but especially in like the earlier days of like home video, it's the opposite of what we joke about with these streaming services. It'll be like 3 paragraphs that explains the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like with the ending and the plot and everything. And you're like, I don't want that either.
Yep. That's how, some of the descriptions were. The problem I found with Captain Blood, description wise, is like, we watched it on YouTube movies. I looked at the description there. The problem is that they want to talk about like all of the actors involved. Like,
yeah,
that's basically it. And that's kind of what you get. Movie? That's kind of what you even get from Prime Video. Apple TV was the same way. But the description from Prime Video is Errol Flynn made his swashbuckling debut as a dashing young Irish physician who was exiled into slavery by a tyrannical governor.
He was Irish? I forgot about that.
That's it. That's the whole description. Telling you, man. Like, some of these are so vague.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about
nothing?
The movie.
If you don't know what the word swashbuckling means, you're lost.
Real lost. Real lost.
What's a swash and why is it? One of these days we're going to get to that, and I'm going to stop joking about it.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be today.
It's not going to be today.
Wait with bated breath to know what a swash is and why is it buckled.
Yep. So Captain Blood had a budget of $1.24 million. It had a worldwide box office, but it says worldwide rentals. I don't exactly know what that means, but it's $3.09 million. And it was seen as a big risk at the time for Warner Brothers because it was expensive to make.
Right.
And it, at the time, didn't feature any big names, although both Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland became stars after the film's release, and they went on to do a total of 9 movies with Warner Brothers as a romantic couple.
Right. A lot of them together.
What is worldwide rentals? Like, I couldn't figure out what exactly that meant.
That might mean just the film, renting the right to show the film, but I don't know. It's a guess.
So instead of like being the like what we would consider as box office, which is just ticket sales at the time, maybe it was how much they brought in from people wanting to show it at a theater, and then the theater kept
maybe they
most
didn't get
of
ticket
that.
money. They just got paid the right to show the movie in their town.
Okay.
I don't know.
That would make sense if that's what that meant.
But yeah, it's
that was
interesting because
something I found was
at the
interesting.
time, and correct me if in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think at the time Warner Brothers was they were a big studio, or they were becoming bigger, but they because they started the whole partially played a big part in the synchronized sound development. But they were making sort of smaller, sort of like almost what we would today call like not like whatever the positive version of Oscar bait movies are, like social movies about social issues and stuff like that. And they would also make like gangster movies, basically.
Oh,
and both those were really cheap to make.
so both social issues is what you're saying.
Sort of, yeah. Except gangster movies would typically be like the social issue would be like the gangster got shot in the end because he was a bad guy, but really most of the movie he was like the anti-hero.
Yeah.
But because of the Hays Code, you couldn't say that a bad guy was the hero, which is really interesting about this movie. Is he is a bad guy? He is a pirate. It even talks about in a part of the movie where they try not to kill anyone, but sometimes they do. So, do you know what the Hays Code is?
I do not.
It's like it started in 1933, and it's basically like, it was sort of the first version of like the MPAA,
Okay.
but it wasn't a rating system. I think maybe there was some sort of a rating thing to it, but the main thing was it was the movies themselves, regulating themselves so that the government wouldn't. They said, hey, we'll do it, because there was concern, are movies getting too risque? What can we show in a movie? What's acceptable to show in the movie? But instead of having a rating system like we do today, they would just limit what any movie could show. So, like, you couldn't show excessive gore and blood. You couldn't show, extremely sexual scenes. One of the other things that you couldn't show was, like, you couldn't show a cop being a bad guy. You couldn't show a bad guy winning at the end of the movie because that teaches the wrong lesson. You can kind of see where they're coming from, but it also obviously really limited storytelling and logic. So it's weird that, okay, pirate swashbuckling movies are okay, but in a gangster movie, the gangster can't win at the end of the day. He has to be, shot and killed because he's a bad guy.
We would
even if he's
never
the
have
hero.
gotten Infinity War.
No. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Because in
Never
the
would've-
same movie, the bad guy couldn't win.
Yep. Even though it was technically like a two-parter or something.
I don't know how they would have treated that in
I don't either.
with the Hays Code.
No clue.
But it's interesting
Absolutely
stuff.
No clue. I do have a question. What do you guys think about a 1935 Christmas release versus 60 years later with Cutthroat Island?
I don't think it mattered in the 30s.
I don't think it either.
People were like, I
think
got
it
a
actually
quarter,
might
and I
have.
want to see the... they didn't care.
I think it actually might have been better in the 30s than it would have been in 95. To have a pirate movie release at Christmas. Because, I don't know. I didn't look. I don't know how many movies were released in a year like 1935. I'm sure it's significantly less than what would have been released in 95. And I'm sure it's less than what comes out today. Because I don't know if this would have been the only thing in theaters at the time, or if there would have been like a couple
the weird
things,
thing was at the
back
time,
then most of it was like a one-screen theater, right?
yeah, and most of the time, like in your town, if you're in a little town, if your theater was owned by Warner Brothers or owned by Paramount, they showed Warner Brothers and Paramount movies.
And that was it.
You didn't see a Paramount movie if you had a Warner Brothers owned theater in your town, unless they rented it, which is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why in the 50s there was an antitrust suit against Paramount Pictures, and all movie production companies were required to sell the movie theaters that they owned.
That's interesting.
So hypothetically today, Warner Brothers couldn't buy AMC theaters, although stuff like that has been discussed as possibly happening. So we might be reverting back to that pretty soon.
Interesting.
Which is weird.
That's crazy. That's really cool. So I don't know. I'm sure in 1935, I think it probably would have worked a lot better than it would have, for Cutthroat Island. Which Cutthroat Island, we kind of talked about it. There were lots of problems. It wasn't just that it got a Christmas release. I just want to throw that out there. It wasn't that it got a Christmas release. There were a number of other issues.
We soon discovered that.
I personally think that Christmas is not a good time for a pirate movie nowadays. In 1935, it probably would have been phenomenal. And people apparently thought so because it was nominated for 5 Oscars. It was nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated for Best Directing, Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Writing for Adapted Screenplay.
Right, because it was a book.
Yeah.
I have to say, I think the score is like my favorite part of the movie. I love the bombastic score, and it actually inspired a lot of John Williams style in the future, these types of scores from the 30s and 40s.
So the score is done by a guy named Eric Wolfgang Korngold, which is
Great
just a
name.
Fantastic name. And the crazy thing is, Warner Brothers only gave him 3 weeks to score the film.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine trying to score this whole thing in 3 weeks?
Yeah, and you're like in 1935, so like what if like the recording machine broke, which it did? Ice cream machine
Just out of
broke.
luck, man. I thought that was crazy because the score was really good. And I know you talked about it some, Braxton.
Yeah.
It was really solid. Christian, what did you think about the score?
I liked it, especially for the time. I had no clue that it took 3 weeks.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Or that they gave him 3 weeks. That's insane.
Yeah, apparently Warner Brothers really liked him and continued to work with him after the fact and gave they were like, oh man, if we give this guy more time,
he can do really good stuff.
Yeah. It was just crazy to me that they gave him 3 weeks on this one and was like, yep. And he cranked it out and then he got nominated for an Oscar. Wild. Absolutely wild. I do have some notes here about Errol Flynn specifically. So apparently, because this is his first major role. This is the movie that kind of turned him into a star. And he was so nervous at the beginning while filming with the lead role that the director, Michael Curtiz, had to reshoot his Curtiz.
I don't know why.
I don't know. It ends in a Z. Whatever. It's the same freaking thing. Michael Curtiz. Excuse me. Sorry, Braxton. He had to go back.
I'm just protecting you from the comments.
Yeah, whatever. The comments can flame me all they want. He had to go back and reshoot his early scenes later in the production once that Errol actually gained some confidence and felt comfortable being in front of the camera and acting as the lead role, which is crazy. So a lot of the stuff at the end or at the beginning was actually filmed at the very end, which is why that he seems like, he's got his stuff together at the beginning, which I thought was really interesting. I also thought it was interesting that this is the first on-screen duel between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone. They would also reprise this.
Great name also.
Rathbone or Basil?
Both. Basil Rathbone?
Yeah.
Of course he played a villain.
Is it Basil or Basil?
I've heard Basil.
Okay. Well, that keeps him from, being like a spice. So they would reprise this 3 years later in The Adventures of Robin Hood. And I have a clip here about the fight specifically that I want to look at. But I do think it's interesting that, Basil Rathbone is in this movie. He loses, but he's known to be the finest fencing actor in Hollywood, potentially ever, I think, but especially at the time. And this kind of is what started, fencing and sword fighting in movies was this specific one. So he studied fencing when he was young and during his military service during World War I. And then he went back after, I guess, the war, and he won the British Army Fencing Championship not once, but twice.
So you could do the real deal.
The man is a fencer, and apparently he taught like everyone that he ever fenced in a movie how to fence,
which is pretty cool.
Including Errol Flynn. But I do have a clip here that I want to look at. That's kind of a behind the scenes of like the big fencing scene in this, or the big sword fighting scene. I guess technically is what is.
Yeah,
what's
they're not building
going on
fences.
Here. It's true, they're not building fences. They're not building bridges either because the characters are fighting. So let's take a look at the clip.
The famous duel between Basil Rathbone and Errol Flynn was filmed at Laguna Beach. Actually, as the sun was fading, they filmed that sword fight.
Wait! Do not take her while I live. Then I'll take her when you're dead.
It did look really good because it was on a real beach.
Yeah.
You could tell.
Maestro Cabins. I don't even know what to tell you. I have such huge respect for the man because he was the person who started this sword stuff in the movies.
Fred Cabins was the fencing master and the dual choreographer.
He trained the people and he put on these fights that were fights like fights should be. His tempo, his timing, the way they move, the way they're balanced, just their footwork.
Basil Rathbone became an absolute disciple of Fred Cabins. So that Basil Rathbone had the reputation of being the best swordsman in Hollywood.
Basil Rathbone obviously was a fencer.
Errol Flynn had that kind of natural grace and athletic ability. He just looked good.
And he's standing up and he's doing all of his choreography and he's into it, you know, he's really into it. When he and Rathbone are fighting on those slippery rocks, they're doing a great job.
So I thought it was interesting that one, they actually filmed it on the beach.
Yeah.
Which almost the entirety of this movie was filmed on a soundstage in Hollywood, except for these scenes on Laguna Beach. But I mean, I don't know that because, well, I don't know. They pay actors so much money now. I don't know that they would ever be put in the situation to fence or sword fight on like slippery rocks.
Yeah. Basically because, you know, if Errol Flynn slipped and smashed his head open, you know, production's going to shut down for 3 weeks.
At least. If he dies, you scrap the whole
That's
thing.
what I was going to say. Like, man, it would be funny to me, like, if one of those interview guys was like, yeah, they actually fought so hard that one of them actually killed the other one. He died. that happened in the movie. That's how they used to do it in old Hollywood.
The sword fights, I mean, dude, they look great. Like, that is one thing about this movie that I was impressed by was how good, like, some of that looked. Because, I mean, you could tell that they were actually going at it themselves. It's not like a stunt man or anything like that that's in there sword fighting. And apparently Errol Flynn, before the movie, did not know how to, like, fence or sword fight or anything. And so Basil Rathbone taught him basically everything he knew. So it was interesting that, you know, he comes out on top over the guy that
that's funny.
is teaching him, which is kind of the story for Basil Rathbone in almost every movie. I think there's maybe one where he like actually comes out on top and then is quickly beaten by someone else. So it's interesting that he's kind of the villain in all of these and he never really gets the lead role considering that he's, you know, the one teaching everyone how to fence. But, you know, he's still fencing and being in movies and had a pretty successful career, all things considered. So in the military, good swordsman comes, teaches people how to fight on set. Interesting. According to the IMDb like trivia stuff, there were no full-size ships used whatsoever. They used process shots, they used some miniatures, and they also took footage from 1924's The Seahawk. And then I also saw something else.
Took footage from that.
Yeah, I also think I saw something. It said some of the ship-to-ship battles, I guess towards the end, were taken from a movie called The Divine Lady from 1928.
I wondered that too.
That or The Seahawk.
Because there were some of those scenes in there where you could tell like the film quality was lower. Like nothing else about it looked different to the eye, but the film quality was lower, and I bet it was those scenes that they copy and pasted in.
It definitely could have been. Yeah.
They did a whole lot more of that back then because of the lower quality, and just the editing style of movies back then. No one could really tell. And you didn't have to pay to build a giant ship and get a shot of it. You just use it from somebody else's.
Yeah.
Who did spend the money.
Not everybody's, Rennie Harlan.
Right.
So,
drinks that V8.
It's probably a good thing in this terms because they already had like a really big budget, I think, on it.
Right. So they were saving money where they could. But the miniatures looked like really good. All this stuff of things being shot and exploded, it looked great.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw the Seahawk is in public domain. I'm pretty sure that was one that I'd sent to us. I'm pretty sure it's a silent film, but it might be worth, watching on like a Talk Like a Pirate Day special or something like that and kind of see how that compares to something like this. Because this is like one of the first talkies, I think, of this magnitude. I'm pretty sure. So it'd be interesting to see too, like just like what shots maybe that we can see that were taken from the Seahawk and put in to Captain Blood. And I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to check out too, because if the shots that they're taking look as good as they do, it'd be worth watching just to see.
Yep. Someone should make a movie today called Captain Blood, but it's like a low budget horror about like a ghost pirate.
I was not expecting his name to be
Peter Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Maybe it was just,
it makes for a great title.
Yeah, I just thought Captain Blood was going to be like, oh, this is the most action-filled, like murderous pirate that there ever was, and it turns out he's like one of the most noble that there ever was.
I'm sure that's what, like, if you look at the posters and stuff, that's kind of how it built too. Errol Flynn is like he doesn't look scary, but he doesn't look.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's meant for people to see it and be like, oh, Captain Blood, does he kill thousands of people? He's.
Yeah. Would we get a Captain Blood or a Captain Bloodbeard?
Captain Bloodbeard. Yeah, maybe.
I'm genuinely
Bloodbeard. Yeah, they'd probably call it Captain Bloodbeard.
I don't know if you could get away without some kind of like naming fee to call it just Captain Blood.
Yeah.
Because there's several Captain Bloods. Like, this is not the only
No.
Captain Blood film that's ever been made. So this is just probably the most famous one, if I had to guess, because of Errol Flynn and how much success it had. I also have a note here that the final battle sequence utilized one of the largest technical crews ever assembled for a film at the time. And it required a bunch of extras. Can you guys guess how many extras that there were?
Back in the day, they'd use like 1,000 people just because they could. So, I don't know, 500? Ridiculous number?
Yeah, I was going to say 435.
435. The note that I found says 250 extras, which I don't know if that's just... I think that's just for the final battle sequence. I don't think that's, the whole thing. But and that's just extras. That doesn't include the rest of the crew because, as I said, it was like outrageously huge. But I thought that was interesting because, you can tell there's a lot of people on the sets towards the end of that. I would not have thought 250, but I would guess that's including Captain Blood's crew and the crew of the ship that they like pull over and then swing onto, maybe. I don't know where exactly 250 extras would fit in there at the end.
I think that's just what they did. You remember which it's a pretty small joke, but in Blazing Saddles, Gene Wilder makes a joke when he's talking about him being the Waco Kid that he's killed more men than Cecil B. DeMille. It's a pretty one-off joke, but what he's joking about is Cecil B. DeMille made like epic movies in the 20s and 30s. Famously, there not being many safety regulations, he probably did kill a few people.
Oh my gosh.
So I think that's where that joke is coming from. Is I've killed more men than the movie director from epics of the 20s and 30s.
Wow, that's crazy.
Okay, I had a note that I just wanted to bring this up and see if y'all remembered this. I had a note that says Tortuga note, question mark, question mark. Do you remember what that's referring to? I think there was a title card that said something about Tortuga, but it was like pointless. And we were like, what was the point of that title card? Do you remember that?
We didn't even talk about the title cards. We didn't talk about the title cards.
Because the first ones make sense because it's like, okay, here's where we are in history. But then it uses them 2 or 3 more times and like that, we understand like where they are. Like we don't need the title card.
Yeah.
Or just have a character be like, yep, we're in Tortuga.
And some of it wasn't even like a title card that just came up and like showed a location or something like that. Like it was we're going to explain everything that's happening right now. And we're going to have like 5 of these in a row with text that's hard to read.
Yeah.
Because it was in some
Which is
like,
interesting, Christian, right?
font.
Because like they would do that to try and over-explain something. Meanwhile, like in the dialogue, if you missed something else, you would be confused. So they over-explained some things and under-explained others.
Yeah. Christian, did you feel that the title cards were necessary at all?
I don't know. I don't think that I remembered any of them. Like,
Then they weren't
I can't recall
necessary.
when they were. I know that they like kind of split up different chapters. Like if the first part of the film took place here and then it would jump somewhere else, usually to make it not as jarring, there'd be some sort of transition shot with the title card over it that would explain something. But also, I remember the title cards being super fast to where if you didn't read it in time, like that was it.
It's like, and a bunch of people didn't have good reading comprehension back in 1935. You know what I mean? Like you're showing this movie in like middle of nowhere, Kansas. Some of those people can't read no good.
Yeah.
They came to see a movie because it talks at you. You don't got to read no words.
Oh my God. Well, Braxton's getting canceled.
I'm sorry, Kansas. I apologize.
Captain Blood was originally released at 119 minutes. Warner Brothers cut 20 minutes worth of footage from the film for its theatrical reissue in 1951 in order that it could fit onto a double bill with the Seahawk from 1940.
Wait, we watched the cut version?
Well, no, we watched the uncut version.
Oh. Wait, I thought you said it...
119 minutes, which is an hour and 59 minutes.
I thought you said 2 hours and 19 minutes. I was like, we watched the cut version?
No, we watched the full version.
Okay. Hey, maybe we should have watched the cut version.
Maybe so. Maybe so. They cut 20 minutes worth of footage from it for its theatrical reissue in 1951 so that it could be on a double bill with the Seahawk, which was also trimmed. And the cut reissue version was also broadcast for many years on television. The film was restored to full length when it first released on VHS in the 1980s, and this was also the version that later released on DVD and now shown on TCM. I'm not sure what TCM is, but...
You want me to tell you?
Yep, that's why I asked.
Okay, so TCM stands for Turner Classic Movies.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's a really cool thing. You can find cool stuff. Actually, you can see a lot of them now on Max. There's like a little box you can go to. There's like Cartoon Network, and one of them would be TCM. You can actually go in there and find some really cool stuff.
That's cool.
But, are you going to get into was this movie ever colorized by Ted Turner?
It was computer colorized. I guess it was by Ted Turner. I didn't see a specific name attached to who did it.
Because that's what's interesting about TCM is because Warner Brothers owns like the back catalog of like 2, 3 or 3 other movie studios, including their own. And it's because Ted Turner bought the TV rights to these movies to show them on TV. So that's pretty innovative. And it actually, it helped preserve a lot of movies historically.
Yeah.
But ironically, when doing that and creating TCM, at the same time, there was huge controversy in the 80s and 90s because Ted Turner would take movies like this, famously It's a Wonderful Life, and recolorize them. And people would be like, these movies were never meant to be in color. Why are you messing with them? So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy.
Maybe he's the one that recolored it. I will say I have a clip of the final battle scene that's in black and white and in color. And I will say, I don't know if it's just because of like maybe the version that they used for black and white has been like restored since the colorized version was. Colorized version looks terrible.
It's probably because the black and white one has been like rescanned and refixed.
Yeah.
And the color one wasn't, maybe.
The colored one does not look good. Before I get to that, I have a couple other fun facts that I want to get through real quick. So this film had 6 editors, and they cut down 60,000 feet of film into 11 reels. Yeah, a lot of film.
Christ. This should have been a serial.
Yeah. This is crazy. Olivia de Havilland, who is the female lead in this, passed away in July of 2020 at the age of 104.
Yep.
Which I thought was cool.
Yep.
Michael Curtiz. Did I say that correctly this time? Am I good? Is that a no?
No, that's correct. I'm just laughing about it.
So Michael Curtiz and Errol Flynn apparently hated each other. And Curtiz would often make him do 10 takes per scene. Apparently that was like a thing between them two. And then on other fun fact here, I think this may be one of the last ones that I've got. It was on February 27th, 1937. Lux Radio Theater did a broadcast that was a 60-minute radio adaptation of the film. And Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, Basil Rathbone, and Henry Stevenson reprised their roles for the film for this radio broadcast. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if I can find that somewhere. That'd be kind of cool to listen to.
Yeah,
and see how
there's tons of that stuff that's just lost.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they turn that into a radio broadcast. And then the last fun fact that I have is Xavier Atencio, who is the person who scripted the Pirates of the Caribbean Disney ride. He based the tone and dialogue of the ride on Captain Blood. And there are a couple other movies that I think kind of inspired it too, but specifically Captain Blood I think was kind of one of the main ones.
Yeah. I definitely see the dialogue, because there's a lot of that in the ride, and transitioned even over into the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, of them trying to keep a lot of the 16th, 17th century dialogue in there, you know?
Yeah. And then I do have one more thing before we get to this clip. So I couldn't find any merchandise for this one. Nothing that I could find that was really directly related to the movie itself. But there is a Captain Blood video game, which we found a trailer for when we were going through this the other day. And that game I brought up specifically because it has been stuck in development hell for years.
For real? Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I just remembered. Wait. What did the guy's comment say that made us laugh? What did it say?
He said this movie is about to become a video game or something, I think.
And it was 2 months ago, and we laughed at the fact that someone commented on... It's not even a YouTube video. On the YouTube movie 2 months ago, commented, "This will be movie."
This will be movie?
That's not what it said, but in my head, that's kind of what it said.
This will be video game?
Oh, this will be me. That's what it said in my head. That's what goes on in my head.
Oh, man. So this game apparently has been stuck in development forever. It was set to release in 2010 on Xbox 360. There's even some copies of the fully completed game in circulation that were sent out as like test copies or something. But the video that we found, that's a trailer, IGN uploaded on June 17th, 2024. And the description for this video is: "Say hello again to Captain Blood, a hack and slash pirate action game set in the 1600s aboard the Spanish Main. Various incarnations of Captain Blood have been in development since the 2000s, and it was last seen in 2010. Now it's back and almost ready for release." And then at the end of the gameplay trailer, it says releasing fall 2024. So we'll see if this thing actually gets to come out. But apparently there's a Captain Blood game. It actually looks kind of cool. I don't know that it really has anything to do with this movie specifically. I think it's more based on the book than it is the movie. But I thought it was interesting that somehow there's a game by the same name, which is based on the book that the movie's based on, and it's just been like completely stuck for years because it's done. Like they completely finished it and it just never got released.
That is pretty crazy. Who is the? I'm trying to look up who the developer is. Oh my God!
Several that have been working on it, but one of them was Bethesda.
It was formerly called Age of Pirates, Captain Blood, or no? It was.
Yeah, at one point.
Okay.
And it was like a series of games that goes like way
That's
back.
what I was going to say. They made a game called Sea Dogs, which I've actually played.
Mm-hmm.
But Christian, do you remember that there was a Pirates of the Caribbean game?
Mm-hmm.
That was supposed to be Sea Dogs 2.
It was Disney sort of bought it and shifted the rights. Why do I know that? I knew that even before this pod. Why do I know that? I don't even know. But anyway.
I don't know. That sounds like something you would have watched in some YouTube channel that you follow.
I don't know.
Okay, so let's take a look at this clip. This clip is the final big battle scene between Captain Blood and the French ships that he's fighting against. And I've cut together, if you're watching the show and you're not just listening to it, I would recommend watching this part just for context about what we're talking about, because I have cut together the same frame of black and white footage that actually looks really good. And then the colorized version, which
the colorized version is probably transferred from a tape.
I don't know. We'll take a look at it and see what we think.
We never miss.
We never miss. The colorized version just does not look good.
Yeah. And some of the...
That explosion is crazy.
That's one ship need to dispose of. Now for the other one. Jeremy, helm quarter to port. Aye, aye, Peter. Clear away that burning wreckage.
Okay, that actually looks like it's on fire.
Yeah, I think it was.
Burn the port door!
Yeah, it is crazy the difference in quality.
Yeah, it also kind of looks like it's squished, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. The shots of the ship at the beginning where they're shooting it with the cannons and there's pieces of the ship flying into the air and landing. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I completely even forgot.
The wide shots of the ships?
They're either miniatures or they're shots of the ships taken from other movies.
Right.
Yeah. But the freaking Cutthroat Island explosion that they have in there, I completely forgot about till I went back and watched this clip.
It's a gigantic explosion.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about them doing that gigantic explosion in 1995 or, a couple years prior while they were actually doing the filming. But this is 1935 or before.
Yeah.
And that's
Which
a crazy
they were
explosion.
using real there was no C4. They were using cartoon dynamite sticks.
Yeah.
Because that's all they had was the Wile E. Coyote size dynamite.
Yeah. That explosion's crazy. And they actually did that somehow.
Yeah.
I don't see how you get that kind of explosion from a miniature. Christian, do you think that you could get an explosion that looks like that from a miniature?
No, not the splintering, which is why I feel like that they took that from another movie. Maybe it's Seahawk. I don't know.
I don't know. That shot was crazy to me. Which the shots that I think I said while we were watching it, I was like, holy crap, this is nuts. Was the pieces of wood splintering 100 feet in the air and coming down.
Well, what was crazy to me too is even before the big explosion, when they're hitting the other ships and it would list and the sails would flop. When that happened, I was like, I feel like this is what an actual ship battle would look like. With them jerking around and what I mean, not a perfect, elegant sort of thing that they're sort of being jerked around by the sea and projectiles and
That is interesting that I haven't really thought about is like just how much the sea would affect a fight like that too, like an at sea ship to ship battle. Because it always seems like it's just like a calm day. There's not a wave in the ocean, and they're just sitting there fighting each other. Like, do they drop anchor during battle? Like, how do they just sit like right across from each other?
It's a good question. If you want me to answer, I've never heard of anyone dropping anchor to battle. I feel like that would be such a big, just like a nuisance. And then there's also no guarantee that where you are, there's anything that the anchor would actually catch on to hold you in place. And then you've got to worry about tides and all that. I feel like it would be a lot more like jousting, where you just have to take your pass and that's as good as it's going to get. And then you've got to regroup.
Line up again.
Yeah, tend to the injured man, get ready for another pass. I feel like they happened a lot more like that than
maybe
two ships side by side.
Or maybe I always assume maybe there was a little bit of like running like clockwise to each other, like in a circle.
Kind of circling that way, you're kind of sort of facing each other the whole time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like.
But yeah, among fighting each other, you have to be worried about where you're going, where you're going to be, what direction the wind is, what direction the ocean's taking you.
Well, and it's always interesting. Like, I know this movie, you kind of see it a little bit, or at least you don't see Captain Blood behind the wheel steering the ship during battle.
He uses the actual first mate thing. Like, they did use it, right, Christian, basically? Or was it the first mate or the boatswain? Who's the guy who had the wheel?
Especially in the kind of heat of battle, I'm sure that it's very difficult to hold on to that line of succession. And so I don't know. I could definitely see him probably demoting that task to, or giving that task to someone that he trusted.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know I was thinking back to Cutthroat Island too, where we see a battle. Pirates of the Caribbean, I think even at times kind of seems like they just like sit across from each other perfectly still and just blast at each other. Theirs is maybe not quite as much as like Cutthroat Island or like even this one at times seem to be. Because like I understand like you're able to slow down to an extent, but like you can clearly see in this movie, especially like even in kind of the clip that we just watched, like this, they got the first ship, blew it up. Second ship is coming from behind, and then it almost just like stops like perfectly parallel to them, and they battle. Like, is that even realistic at all? Or I would not think so. That just seems crazy. That's something that I've never really even thought about. Like, oh, like this battle's kind of just sitting here and firing at each other perfectly still, because like the ocean is not that way at all.
I was looking up about the person who steers the ship. You know what he's called?
The steerer.
A coxswain. Because of course he was.
All right.
There are a lot of jokes to be made about that, but we're just going to move on. Because we're professionals here, okay?
How do you spell it?
Well, it's spelled coxswain. But I think it's pronounced like coxswain.
Okay. Interesting. And he was the one that was she was in charge of steering the ship? Yes. Okay. Interesting. Is that like their sole job? They like are always the one there steering?
Could be, but I mean, technically, yeah, they would also could be called a helmsman, I guess. But yeah, that's basically what they did. Our question that we asked several times while watching the movie, which was, why are they dressed like pilgrims?
They were dressed like pilgrims.
I think that's a good segue.
Like, Peter Blood could have either been a pirate captain or having dinner off the Mayflower.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, all the outfits seemed outdated. I remember when they showed one of the Spanish ships, and the outfits seemed more like 1550s conquistadors.
Yeah, that was the
Instead
main
of-
thing we said was like, these look like conquistadors, not
Yeah,
this era.
it just looked very out of place for Spanish sailors of that time period.
What about pilgrims though? Is that the same thing, or I wouldn't think that that's what a conquistador would wear, would it?
No, so the Spanish and the British sailing attire of the period, it's I'm sure there is some color differentiation, especially if it's like an official uniform, but they were much more relaxed and almost hard to differentiate between English and Spanish. I'm not sure about what the islanders would wear. They were very pilgrimish. This is one of those movies that really makes it easy to make fun of that period when people wore powdered wigs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because there's so much of that.
And it's not like the little ones, like George Washington wore. It's like gigantic
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. Especially like you don't necessarily see it for the whole movie, but you see it a lot at the beginning when he's like a slave taking care of the governor. Is that what that guy was?
Which a lot of that kind of reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean, with the
Especially the first
governor,
one.
and she wasn't the governor's. No, she was the governor's daughter, wasn't she?
I think so.
There was that,
Yeah.
Tortuga. They go to Tortuga. Port Royal gets attacked.
They went to Tortuga?
Yes, because that's what we made fun of the title card popping up and saying that.
When did they go to Tortuga though? Was that like while they were still slaves, or is this as pirates?
No, I think once they're pirates.
Okay.
I think that's where they went.
I did see something. Apparently, in the book, instead of saving the governor's daughter like he does, I'm trying to remember, what is her name in the movie? Like her actual character's name?
I don't know.
Well, I think it was like Annabelle,
Yeah, that sounds right.
something like that. I don't know. Look it up.
Arabella.
Arabella. There we go. I knew there was a bell in there somewhere,
Gotcha.
which is also the name of the ship in the movie, if you didn't catch that. The Arabella. But I saw something where I think in the book, instead of saving Arabella, he like saves a girl from Tortuga or something, and they didn't think that was necessary for the movie, so they took it out and just combined the characters basically.
Right.
So I don't know if that would have made a difference too. I mean, that's probably introducing a character too late in the movie for it to like have any significance at all.
That makes sense why they did that. Also, before we forget, there was a character named Honesty Nut-All that we took great humor in making fun of. Because I think they said it several times too, which is funny.
They did, but I saw it on the opening
That's
title.
what we were like, Honesty Nut-All. What the heck?
I said something
crazy
about it,
name.
and you were like, "What? I didn't even read that on there."
There was also,
dude.
according to the Wikipedia, there was a character named Dr. Whacker. There was wait, wasn't there? What was the guy? You remember there was the old guy who would quote Bible verses, and he did a lot of mouth acting, like because I guess he was old.
His name was. I know which one you're talking
But
about.
anyway,
he's
he
like
got
a taller, like skinny guy, right?
He got a couple good laughs out of us because it was only funny because of the way, like, how the movie cut to him. Like, something normal in the movie would be happening, and then it would cut to his face on a close-up and saying a Bible verse and then, like, giggling to himself or something.
Oh, the guy looked like Ryan Stiles.
Yes. The guy from Who's Line.
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about that during the movie.
Well, one of the characters is based off of a real, very historically significant pirate.
Oh really?
So
Honesty
there's
Nuttall.
some legitimacy. Captain Nuttall, yeah. But there is a character played by Mr. Basil, whatever his last name was. I forgot his last name.
Bosal.
His last name was Rathbone.
Rathbone, yeah. He played a character named Levasseur, which is based on a real French pirate, Olivier Levasseur, who possibly was the richest pirate of all time. It's hard to confirm. It's all speculation. But there's a very real possibility that he was the richest pirate of all time. Do you want to know the story?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a cool story. It's a really interesting story. But essentially, there was a sailing route it came to be known as the Pirate Round. It was this sailing loop around the southern coast of Africa up to India, because after piracy began to dry up in the Caribbean, it all moved to waters between Africa and India. All these massively wealthy Portuguese ships were sailing through the area now. Levasseur, after kind of abandoning piracy in the Caribbean, then started to focus his attention toward Madagascar, Reunion Island, Seychelles, the area east of southern Africa. And there was a Portuguese ship that was incredibly unlucky. It just went through a storm and it had started to sink. And to prevent it from sinking, they had to dump every single cannon that they had on the ship overboard. They had to get rid of all this weight.
Oh my gosh.
And then it's like, as the storm cleared, this huge pirate ship sails up alongside them, and they've like gotten rid of all their cannons. They don't have any way to defend themselves. So they had to like give over everything they had. And there are estimates that what was on Nossa Senhora do Cabo was between, like, the more liberal estimates are between like $1 and $4 billion worth of valuables. Like, there was
without firing a shot.
There was like a 2 to 3 meter tall cross that was like completely bedazzled with emeralds that was like going to a church in India.
I think that's loosely similar to like Outer Banks season 3.
Yeah, it's probably inspired a lot of stuff, but like the estimates were that, and people think you get all this treasure, it immediately gets split. It does not. Usually you have to repair a ship. Probably most of what you capture, it's like, it sucks because it's essentially like burning down your house every time you go out and get all this money, and then you've got to repair everything that you messed up before you even get any back. So they probably didn't have to do that much repairs to rigging or to the sails of the ship. So the estimates that I've read were that each man that he was with probably walked away with, like, I've seen estimates that they all walked away with about 50,000 pounds of coins each, like, as in the monetary value, not the weight.
Yeah.
And we don't really know what they did with this. He's loosely associated with this pirate colony called Libertatia or Libertalia that has still not been found. It was this kind of like hidden pirate kingdom off the coast of Madagascar, possibly on a place called Ile Saint-Marie. We have not found it. There were a bunch of pirate kings that were associated with this. It comes from that book, The General History of the Pirates. And it's considered by most historians to be a mythological place, but there is some evidence that it may have actually existed. And we have no clue what happened to all this stuff.
Did we know? Yeah, I was going to say, did he die or?
Yeah, and so his death is associated with this cipher. As he was about to be hanged, there's a legend that says, like, he essentially threw out this map and cipher with all these Masonic codes, 17 lines of Masonic code, and asked for his treasure to be found. It's a little bit fanciful. Like, we now know that almost certainly that this is a 19th century invention, probably just put into a novel, and then over time people lose where they initially got that information. But it was believed, that's one of the things that I talked about on the History Channel was Levasseur's cryptic cipher. Could it be real? Is it just a bunch of like folklore? We don't exactly know, but there have been, in I believe 1947, there were what was believed to be pirate bodies, pirate sarcophagi, and some artifacts found in a cave in Seychelles. And that man passed away in the 1970s. He actually used the cipher to try to narrow down some of his locations. Now his son is looking into it on the Seychelles island chain. And they're doing all sorts of stuff looking for a potentially buried treasure in the vast cave system there. But
Are
it
those
is
also
based on
off
a real
the coast
pirate.
of Madagascar?
Yeah, it's a little bit further northeast.
Uh-huh.
More kind of middle of East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of pirate history in Madagascar. Reunion Island, there's a really cool pirate cemetery on Reunion Island. I believe Levasseur is buried on Reunion Island. But as always with most pirates, they're tracked down. They're usually not as rich as people said they were at the time of their death.
Right. But see, that's what kind of sucks about him, though. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if he got away with it? If we just we don't really know when he died. Because, again, if you got that one fortune with that one day of work and you got probably as much money as you could ever need, wouldn't it be kind of cool if history was like, yeah, we don't really know what happened to him and he retired?
He disappeared.
Yeah.
Because he had all the
He had
money
a cool
he ever wanted.
nickname.
Yep.
They called him La Bouse, which was the buzzard. It's not exactly known why. Some people say it's because of how fast he was, how fast he could get across the ocean. It might be more about his attitude, how he was kind of more of a scavenger.
Right. Well, you could say that the Spanish ship, was an attack of opportunity. It was someone coming in and scavenging on.
Yeah. I thought that was cool because and it's partially because he was more involved off the coast of East Africa, and we typically associate pirates with the Caribbean and the romanticized version. But he is potentially one of the most important pirates ever, maybe one of the richest after what they took off of that ship. And this was the very first time I've seen him in a movie. Blackbeard gets a lot of movie love. Captain Kidd gets a little bit of movie love. But this is the first time I've ever seen Levasseur in a movie. It was really cool. Especially, I really liked the actor that they chose for him and how good he was at fencing. I thought it was cool that he actually kind of taught his own opponents in movies how to fence.
Yeah. I think he's
also not
actually
French.
Yeah, I think he actually said that while he fit like the build and stuff that they were looking for, he didn't think he was the correct casting to play Levasseur. So it's interesting that you say that he was like the perfect person because he did not think so himself.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
he
thought
thought the bad guy should have been like stockier or more.
I don't necessarily know
presence,
that it was that. I'm not really sure what it was that he necessarily saw that he thought should have been different, but
yeah,
he thought that he was miscast.
I thought he was cool. I thought he was a little bit over the top, which is what I want in a pirate character.
I mean, I do like the part of the history stuff that is weaved in and out of this, with the King James and then the Revolution transferring of power, William of Orange. I liked all that stuff, which even if the time period it might not exactly fit, I think it does, though, especially based on the novel.
I don't know how accurate it was that they would just send prisoners to do manual labor in Jamaica.
See, I thought that was like probably the most accurate thing, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I've just never heard of that. I'm sure they did it.
Oh, I actually talked about it in the captain's log a couple weeks ago, because apparently one of the pirates, because we went to Rhode Island. I talked a lot about that trip because apparently pirates were like pretty big in Rhode Island. There's actually a bunch buried under a lighthouse at Goat Island that we got to go look at. And it turns out on the day that I was there was the 301st anniversary of the largest public execution of pirates, like in the history of the 13 colonies, where they killed like 26 pirates.
Jesus.
But
Turns out they
there
just
was
killed
one
25 pirates and some guy named George who was just there. Sorry.
But there was a pirate that was tasked, like they were like seen as privateers, like they could come in and actually get contracts to do privateer work and go out and do whatever. But this specific one was contracted to take prisoners to Jamaica. And I think they were maybe like they had gone out and captured a ship and brought back prisoners and then were told to take them to Jamaica. And he was like, okay. But then he was like, I have no intention of doing that. So he sails to like Madagascar instead.
Oh. There were a lot of people brought to the Americas under either indentured servitude or as legitimate, prisoners.
Yeah.
Who were just sent here to work. I do have one more history thing that I looked up because I was curious about it, which was there was the rosary. You remember that? It's called the Rosary of Pain that he threatens to use, and it's like a ball on a little rope. You remember that?
No.
Levasseur threatens to use it. And it's basically like a rope with a couple like wooden like balls on it and a stick. And so what they would do is they would tie it around your head with like the ball on your eye. And then they would take the stick and twist it to tighten it.
Ooh.
And then when it got close enough to your eye, it would, basically burst your eyeball.
That sounds awful.
But that was real because I wanted to look up. I was like, is this just a movie thing? It's like, nope, it was real.
Do not make me use the rosary of pain.
Essentially, yeah. That's an interesting. It's a very simple form of torture, but I would say it's probably very effective.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
I don't know. I'd give it a try.
You will be blinded.
Okay. Bingo was his name. Oh. Okay. Here's what Captain Blood has got on its side, okay?
Okay.
They say avast or I. There's a lot of cannon fire. There's the proper era of ship. The Jolly Roger is featured. He says me hearties. That's one of the things that this movie has that other ones don't. He actually says me hearties. They sort of vaguely mention the pirate code, although not as explicitly as other ones. Let's talk of the Royal Navy.
When they talk about the pirate code, is it the pirate code itself, or is it because they do talk a little bit about like dividing shares of their?
I think that's what it was. Because which was real is they would make like contracts with their crew, and that's sort of what they talk about.
Because it was like you get one share,
yes,
you get one share, and nothing, and like plus you were injured, so you get a little extra compensation.
And Honesty Nuttall shoots his own foot after the battle, and he gets nothing for it.
Yep, because he's dumb.
They do sing a sea shanty for a very small part of the movie. General pillaging takes place when the Spanish attack Port Royal. There's a boarding party. There's a giant cavalier hat. They do put the cutlass between the teeth. They say the word pirate. They raise the sails and the masts. There are several unnecessarily shirtless guys when they're on the ship and when they're prisoners. They're wearing like super tattered, like almost not any clothes at all. They swing and sort of fly through the rigging at one point. And a new one that is added because it's happened 2 other times is Port Royal is attacked. That's on our bingo now.
Okay.
Another one I think that is added is, or that I'm going to add is Visit Tortuga. Because that's happened more than once.
Yeah. Tortuga. This is a tale.
Why was it called Tortuga? Does anyone know that?
I mean, Tortuga literally just means like turtle.
Right, but why did they call it turtle?
Maybe it was Turtle Island? It's not really an island, though, is it? Tortuga? Or is it an island?
So it was named by the 1492 Christopher Columbus voyage after they believed it resembled a turtle's shell.
Interesting. So it's like old, the name, and that's it. As far as
quest
to the island of Tortuga. Yeah, at some point we have to do a whole episode where we talk about that Lonely Island song, because that was huge.
Yeah, that was
in
kind
our
of weird,
lives.
but we're back in the club.
Captain Jack, Johnny Depp.
All right, who wants to start us off with ratings? So if you're new to the show, we're glad to have you. If you're unfamiliar with our rating system, we have the pieces of 8, which we rank movies from 0 to 8 on a general movie rating, which is basically just what we think of the movie in general. Then we also have a piratyness rating, which is how piratey that we think the movie is. That is also 0 to 8. Both of these are 0 to 8.
General rating 4 out of 8.
Okay.
And piratyness, although I would also give it a 4, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 8. Mostly because the back end of it was fairly acceptable. I guess a 3.5 out of 4. But the first half, or even more, of the movie, there's no mention of piracy or anything along those lines
I think it took like 47 minutes
at all. Yeah.
before they said the word pirate. And even then, there's not much piracy that's actually taking place by them for like another 10 or 15 minutes.
So for me, I think I'm going to give it a 5 out of 8 on quality, on how good it is, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 8 on piratyness.
So for my general rating, I've kind of gone back and forth on what to give this, because I do think I enjoy like the last third of the movie, if maybe a little more than that. I thought it was like really entertaining. The beginning, not so much, but I think I still enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 8 on a general score. And then I thought it was actually pretty piratey. You know, there's lots of swashbuckling. There could have been maybe some more things in there than what they actually did. So for my piratyness score, I'm actually going to give it a 5.5 out of 8. I was leaning 6 or 7 actually, but I think maybe because it takes so long to get to anything piratey, and then there's some things that happen, especially towards the very, very end piratey. But I don't know. I feel like there could have been a little more in this than what they ended up doing. Still pretty solid though.
Yep.
So, and then lastly, should we induct Captain Blood into our rated Aargh Pirate Cinematic Universe? I vote yes, specifically because it inspired a lot of the things to come, including Pirates of the Caribbean, which
True.
we love.
Yeah.
I'm kind of leaning yes. Christian?
I'm on the fence. Reasons for no. Pretty boring. Not as great as others. I would say it would not be considered as great as the people around it. But I've also made the exact same argument for other movies because, I mean, it could be the Babe Ruth. Like, when it came out, it was revolutionary. Wouldn't stand up today, but you still have to respect it for what it did during its time.
Yeah.
The reason I'm leaning yes is because this was like the breakout film for Errol Flynn, who went on to do so many other movies, became a huge name. 2, it seems like the sword fighting and the choreography in this was like revolutionary. And that this movie and those specific scenes were a big reason why sword fighting is commonplace. And not just pirate movies today, but so many different within the action genre. Star Wars, Indiana Jones.
Lord
It
of the
seems
Rings.
like this film was like instrumental for that to happen. And so I would say for that reason, it would probably be within the Hollywood pantheon. And it seems like so many popular critics have the same idea today, saying, yes, it belongs in the top 100, top 1,000 movies in Hollywood history. So I think I've talked myself into a yes.
Interesting. Okay. See, I'm on the fence as well, and I almost lean more towards no. I don't know why. The real reason why is, yes, it's influential, but I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, I might eat my words later on, and if I do, I'll eat crow. This is next. Pause for applause. I'm so sorry. What was I saying? I did the bit too
Would
long.
it change your mind if you knew they were making this into a video game?
2 months ago? Absolutely. No.
There's absolutely no reason that should influence you at all.
What I'm trying to say is, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there are other classic pirate movies, classic even black and white pirate movies that are superior to this one. And that's why I lean towards no. But I'm not going to be opposed if we put it in there.
But were they superior after?
Yes.
And does that affect your reasoning? Can you do it first and have the respect for being worse but being first?
I can absolutely do that. So
Yeah.
I'm fine if it is inducted.
I mean, I think it sparked a lot of things that, came from it. I mean, if it inspired the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, I mean, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
This is kind of the first one, like Christian said, where sword fighting is like, on display in its full glory. And
on a wider level, I think it also, because that was always a genre, even especially in silence as well. But I think it did a lot to sort of advance what we would today call an action movie, but it's sort of what we call now an action adventure type movie. Swatches being buckled, so to say. I think it did a lot to create sort of the mold that movies were made like this for like 20 years after and beyond, which is a pretty big deal.
All right. Well, congrats to Captain Blood for being inducted into the Rated Arg Pirate Cinematic Universe. Big things from Captain Blood. So it's almost time for us to take this ship to port, but before we do, we wanted to make sure you found our proverbial message in a bottle detailing next month's movie of choice. So coming October 10th, we'll be taking a look at the 1980s The Fog, just in time for spooky season.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only
you guys excited to watch a spooky movie?
One that would qualify for both? Question mark? I don't know. We'll have to look later next year, see if we can find a. I don't know if there is one.
I mean,
Makes me curious.
Scooby-Doo one.
There's a Scooby-Doo movie called Pirates Ahoy.
Isn't it Ghost Pirates or something?
I don't know.
There's a zombie pirate movie on Tubi, I think.
There you go.
Yeah. Also on Zombie Island features pirates.
Yeah.
Also, there's an original Scooby-Doo episode that features the ghost of Redbeard. That might be a good watch someday. But no, I'm excited for The Fog.
I've never seen it. Christian, have you ever seen The Fog?
Never seen it.
Not even the weather or... Sorry.
Jesus. Have you seen The Fog? You were the one that suggested it.
I've seen The Fog.
Okay. Well, there you go. So maybe you'll pick another good one. You did pick Captain Blood for this list, and then you almost didn't want to put it in the freaking cinematic universe. So...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. We hope you enjoyed Captain Blood, and we can't wait to see where our next adventure takes us.